Have you ever been at crossroads where you have to choose between success and happiness? Today's guest assures us that life of our dreams should not come at an unsustainable price. She's a multi six-figure Fortune 500 sales executive, women's career and life coach, yoga teacher, and author of Unless Your Inner CEO. You can learn more about her and her book at beccapowers.com. Welcome to the show, Becca. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Toby. I'm finally here.
Yes, after so long time, after months of trying to connect, and
Mhm.
yeah, we finally had the time, and I'm so excited about you being on the podcast today and everything I'm going to learn from you from your book. Thank you so much for sending me a copy of this wonderful book to me. It's a life-changing book, unless you're I'm not sure if I'm messing up the name. Unless you're inner CEO, you can tell us more, much more better about it. One thing I appreciate more about this book is, as I said before we start recording, is each chapter has a putting into practice and also exercise sections where you have the opportunity to reflect, to answer some questions. It's like what you wrote about in the book, like pause, take a break, and reflect, basically. And these sections of the book at the end of each chapter helps us to pause, reflect, and also find out how we could make use of the things that we've learned from reading each chapter of the book. Thank you so much for this wonderful gift. Yeah.
You're welcome.
So would you like to just share your story, like a little bit about your story, how you became, the CEO of your own life?
Yes, that'd be awesome. So, I have been, as you said in your intro, I've been in Fortune 500 sales for the last 20 years of my career, which is most of my adulthood. And I was back in 2013 that how this whole concept of you are the CEO of your life really first came into my awareness was in the form of like aha moment, right?
Mm.
And I was a regional sales manager for Dell. And I, as a leader, have a charging mantra that people before profits is what I have in my head. And I like to lead from that place and make decisions from that place, because then at least I know they're for my people first.
Yes.
So the long and short is I got recruited by a company that had a very similar philosophy.
Mm.
And so I was like, I thought like the stars aligned, and I was like, I must follow this.
Yeah.
It's my passion. I have to go. And so I did. And I resigned from Dell, and I had to call my VP of sales to resign. And I thought that I would get maybe marked not rehireable, or I thought I would face some type of rejection or something like that. So I was really scared to make this call. But I had a fantastic leader. And when I called, instead of getting met with rejection, I got met with acceptance.
Mm.
And when I shared with him what I just shared with you and the listeners, is that, hey, I wanted to follow my own this mission mantra of mine.
Yes.
He got silent and then responded back with, you are the CEO of your life, and I am so proud of you.
Yeah.
And that like melted over me.
Mm-hmm.
And I got quiet, like just like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What would I do different if I was the CEO of my life?
Yes.
So that's where it came from.
Mm. Oh, that's so beautiful. I can remember, vividly reading this chapter of your book also, where you didn't resign to, to your direct boss, but you went to above him. But that was like a big move, basically, like going above your boss to tell him that I'm sorry, I have to leave this job because it's not people before profit and that. And he told you that, and that you have to be the CEO of your life, and you sat in your car for a while to reflect on that. Then you went to tell your team about it. I'm like, wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah, it was really comical in that sense too. I'm like, I skip leveled my boss and resigned to his boss. I'm like,
Yeah.
the whole thing was just kind of a big moment in time for me, a moment I'll always remember.
Yeah.
But
What gave you that confidence to to skip your boss and just move to the higher level to talk to the other
I
person?
think I knew the integrity of my VP much more clearer than I knew the integrity of my direct boss.
Okay.
And also my VP of sales, I would consider him a visionary. So like if I said to him, like I did, I believe that people before profits is that's my leadership mantra. And I believe in it so much that I want to work for a company that has that as their motto. He would see strength in that. Like I
Yeah.
knew, even though I was terrified, I think part of me knew he would respond positively to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I knew that my director, even though he has the director that I skip leveled, he has a redemption moment later in the book.
Yes.
But I think I knew that he might not understand the depth of my why
Mm.
and
Yeah.
might challenge me more. And I was going to leave regardless, and I wanted to leave on good terms. And I thought I would be able to accomplish that more with my VP.
Oh, that's good. Yes, that was a wonderful move that you made, and I love the fact that he told you that you are the CEO of your life, because that statement, made you take the steps that you took, and also made you give back to this wonderful gift of your book that you have blessed us with. Also, that's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I read up in the book also that I found very relatable is that you said you were a people pleaser, and you work with this method of the power through and it will
Yes.
workout method, and that's took you through your job, took you through your marriage, and yeah, and it's made everything messed up at some points at the end. So can you tell me about how you were able to overcome this people pleasing, or like call it character or habits, and how you're able to let go of the power through and it workout method?
Yes, sure. So yes, the power through and it will work out method. I think almost any high achiever can identify with that. And anybody who is I always say, like, if you're a leader, whether you're in a leadership role or you're a leader in the way you show up in life, I think we have this power through and it will work out method. And I say that because we're the optimists, right? We're the ones building the vision. We're the ones blazing the trail. And so if we can't find our own inner strength and perseverance,
Yeah.
then who can, right? It's up to us.
That's true.
And so that is where I got tangled up, because I thought I was blazing a trail, right? And
Yeah.
so I powered through. I went to this new job. Just to give some context to the listeners, I went to this new job and I was very excited. It did align with my leadership mantra. But I think I knew within the first 3 to 4 months that something wasn't a fit for me. And instead of really admitting that to myself and to somebody else, I powered through because I was aligned to the mission. There are some really wonderful aspects to this company. And I believed in the leadership. I believed in how they were showing up. And I just wanted to be a part of it. So that is what had me powering through.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that so I had a situation. I'm just going to digress for 2 seconds so I can give some more context, and that'll give us lots to chew on for this conversation.
Yes.
Right after I had that 3 to 4 month like aha moment of like, maybe this isn't a fit. You read in the book, not too long later, I got pulled into the office because I was quote unquote too much, right? I was showing up with my big tech spreadsheets and ways of looking at sales business. And it was way different from the role that I got hired in.
Yeah.
So they were like, how about you tone it down by about 50% and let me take away your spreadsheets too. So that moment actually made me cry. But what I found fascinating about it in reflection is that instead of, like I say now, like standing in my personal power, I did have that inner people pleaser, and I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to approve of me, and I wanted to be validated in my decision. I left and took a third of a pay cut to go to this company.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to prove to myself, to my family, and to everybody that I wasn't crazy and that, I made the right decision. And so that's a longer answer, but it gives like a lot of color to the why behind why we do things.
Yes.
Sometimes,
That's true. Yes. We always want to try to make the people around us proud of us, or to show them that yes, we know what we are doing, and yeah, we are whatever we are doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to try to get across in the book, and hopefully I did, was that it's not about beating ourselves up for making bad decisions. We actually, I think most of us make really good decisions based upon the information we have at the time
Yeah.
and what we think we're doing, right? Like I thought I was providing for my family. I thought I was following a mission mantra. I had all the, I would say, right concepts in my head. I was doing
Yes.
things for what I thought was the right reason. I didn't realize that I was disempowering myself in the process.
Mm.
It wasn't until later on down the road that I was like, oh, wow, probably made some bad decisions.
Yes, yes. And I love the way you painted it all out in the book. But I would love you to share with me or with us how and when we can admit that things have been messed up and how we can make progress from this rock bottom.
Yes, that's really good. So, in the book, I curse. So, I don't. Is it okay to curse on here or no? It's
It-
fine. Okay.
it's fine. It's fine.
All right. So the name of the chapter, and I'm not going to curse too much, but it is for a reason.
Mm,
It's called "Admit When Things Are Fucked,"
mm,
and I really wanted to be brash with that because I do have a little bit of education and trauma awareness, and sometimes, and actually most of the times, like Tony Robbins uses cursing in
mm,
his way because it interrupts the pattern in our nervous system, and so that's why I say it like that because especially us who have that powering through mechanism, we need that system interrupt. We need to be like, oh my God, things are so effed right now
yeah.
that I can't even move on.
Mm,
And then when you can stop and admit that things aren't working and they aren't going to plan and just admit like, ow, I have pain in my left shoulder. I've had that for how long? Maybe a year and a half, or
mm,
I've had daily headaches and I've just ignored them, or, I've been clenching my teeth every night at night. These are the little signs, Toby, that we ignore, right? And
yes. Mm,
so when I say that term, I'm like, that's when you're at the point when you're admitting things are fucked,
mm,
there's a lot of signs that you've
mm,
been bypassing,
that's
right?
true. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a very big power in admitting that things are going sideways
Mm,
and to yourself. And
yeah.
then if you admit them to someone else, I know I've listened to some of your podcasts, so like that element of the universe or God, like
Yeah.
can come in and support you, but it's hard to get that almost like universal support until you can be like, hey man, like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a little too much.
Yes, that's true. We have to be able to admit it and say, yes, I've hit rock bottom, basically. And then from that, I believe we're going to be able to find our deliverance from whatever issue that we are facing or your
Yes.
circumstances. Yes. And that what you did also with your job, basically, right? Like in the next chapter, you talk about activating your self-worth. And one thing that you wrote there that hit me was like whenever your net worth, sorry, whenever your net worth is less, then you have to evaluate your self-worth, something like that. Like that's like an app and
Yes.
life arc. Yeah. So how can we? I would love to start with how can we activate our self-worth, especially after experiencing rock bottom or experiencing a loss or unpleasant changes in our lives. How can we reactivate that self-worth of ours?
That's a really great question. And I'm just gonna bring you guys down to the bathroom floor with me because that's where my breakdown happened.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great place to talk about that rise because listeners, I hit the bathroom floor and I'm not joking. Like I powered through for 3 years. And by the time I had just another really bad day at work on top of 3 years of powering through, my body physically couldn't take it anymore. And at like 10 o'clock one night, and getting the kids to bed, because I have 4 kids during this too in middle school. So it's like, and as Toby was saying, death, like I just lost my dad, like a lot of things had happened.
Mm,
And I couldn't power through anymore. And at 10 o'clock at night, family's down, I'm washing my face. I hit the floor and I'm just crying. And that's the when I had just admitted out loud that everything to myself, to God, to friends, whoever wanted to hear that I had no clue how to move forward.
yeah.
And my rise, like, so my darkest and almost like not most embarrassing moment, because it has been my transcending moment. It's my moment of empowerment.
Mm,
But before I rose, that was like one of my lowest moments. I fell to the full floor. I felt disempowered.
mm,
I felt hopeless, powerless, like all of those type of emotions. And then I remembered And I'm not being cheesy when I say this, like that voice from where we started this conversation, my
Yes.
former boss, his voice came into my head and it was like, you are the CEO of your life. And I was like, wow, like
Mm.
it was so empowering. And I still get the goosebumps now. So if you're a listener and you're like, how do I even start to prioritize myself? How do I even start to reconnect with my self-worth?
Mm.
Let me tell you this. You are the CEO of your life, period. There's always time for you to stand and get your grounding, stand firm in your strength. You might not know what to do, but there is no other person that can be the CEO of your life.
Mm.
And for me, there's more that we can talk about, but I'll pause because that was like my moment of
Yes.
empowerment that changed my life.
Wow. I know you talked about this magic carpet ride that changed your whole life. I'd love to hear that story. I'd love you to share this story with me and the listeners.
Yes. So during I got certified as a Kundalini yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And I did it during this period after I was starting in hindsight to feel the I guess side effects of burnout, exhaustion, and stuff like that.
Mm.
One of my team, one I was leading a team, and one of my one of the girls on my team, she came and she left this yoga teacher training packet
Yeah.
on my desk and suggested that like, hey, you should do this teacher training.
Mm.
And at first when I saw it, I was a little dismissal, but I love signs from the universe and stuff like that. So I was like, okay.
Mm.
And the next thing you know, I'm doing Kundalini yoga
Yeah.
as in teacher training. And I'm going into like deep meditations that are like hours long and like days long. We're like sitting on a floor on a
Yeah.
mat for like days. And so I had wonderful experiences, and I call them in the book all of my magic carpet rides.
Mm.
Um, but one of them in particular, because I have a couple in the book, but one of them in particular that I really liked, and it is in the towards the end in the chapter of success and happiness, which is chapter 12. But I have one of my magic carpet rides. I was doing a meditation and they brought us back into tribal experience. Like it was a tribal beat going on, and they wanted us to connect with our higher selves and the wisdom from our ancestry and just all sorts of cool stuff like that. And I'm like, I have no idea where this is going to go. And then
Yeah.
like, we get into meditation and tribal beats starting. And
Mm.
I found myself back in like an Aborigine type of setting where, I was huntress. So as a woman,
Mm.
but I was almost like a priestess in a tribal community, had short black hair and just like beautiful cocoa skin and like paint on my face. But there were so many things about that magic carpet ride that was powerful. But one of the things that I think I like to talk about a lot, and I don't know if you read this part, but all the bracelets.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so in this tribal experience that I'm
Mm.
having, I had two things that happened. One is I came into contact with the essence of the woman that I was being portrayed in this visualization during the meditation.
Yeah.
And there was bracelets all up and down my arms. And then as I look around at my tribal community, everyone had like bracelets, the men and the women.
Mm.
And what the bracelets symbolized is our strengths, not
Mm.
our weaknesses. So they were a way of communicating by vision what people were like. I get tears thinking about that because like we spend so much time in this society hiding and packaging our strengths.
Yeah.
So thousands of years ago or whenever this experience was, we displayed them so that you could see visually from across a field what I might be able to help you with. Like, could you imagine
Yeah.
if we were like that today?
And that was so awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
So that
true.
was just one of my magic carpet rides. That
Yes.
was deep.
Yeah, it's very, very deep. I would encourage, people to get the book. It's available online, and more information can be found on beccapower.com. And you can read more about the magic carpet ride that changed Becca's life, and also other stories. There are a lot of stories that, yeah, like even up until now, as in you didn't go into depth of them like you went in the book. Also, I would encourage everyone out there to just get a copy of the book and just read it and
you.
get some life-changing experiences, basically. Yeah. And one thing, apart from this, this visualization that you talked about, you gave, like, I think 5 steps, or you gave this ladder of
The
self-worth,
ladder of
basically.
self-worth is
Yeah.
very important.
Yes.
Yes.
When I read this, I was like, yes, I mean, Becca must explain this to me. Yeah. Can you please explain this
Yes.
ladder?
I would love to. And I think it ties in really nice to the past 2 stories that I shared about the bathroom floor and even the bracelets.
Yeah.
Because the ladder of self-worth looks like this. If I take you back to my bathroom floor moment,
Mm.
I think it's pretty easy to see that on the ladder of self-worth, I was probably at the bottom,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so there's 5 rungs. First, I'll explain the rungs, and then I'll talk a little bit more about, if you're listening, where you might be, and maybe how to identify that and how to climb up the ladder.
Yeah.
But there's 5 rungs, and I'm going to start at the bottom. So, and I'm going to start at what my ladder looked like, so you can visually see how a ladder is probably not supposed to look.
Mhm.
And then we'll talk about what the ladder should look like.
Yes.
So, sitting where I was on the bathroom floor looking up, my ladder looked like this. Out of the 5 rungs of priority, myself, me as Becca, was at the bottom,
Mm.
right? Then I had like other people, my commitment, soccer practice, all those things.
Yeah.
Then I had the universe, God, whatever label you want to put on that, then my family, and then work, like work, beliefs, money, like all of that stuff, what definitely had number 1.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, regardless if you're starting to think now, where would I be? I think it's really common to get maybe your job as a number 1 priority, or money because you're trying to provide. Not all the times when we have things up above us in priority, again, does it come from a bad place. So if you're listening to this and you're like, God, that's me, don't feel bad about it. Like, we all are chasing our dreams, providing for families, doing what we think is the next best thing.
Yes.
But what I can tell you is that if you're not up on the priority list, which I'll explain what a healthy ladder looks like in a second, you're going to end up on the bathroom floor. And I don't want to see anybody on the bathroom floor. My mission is like, hey, you are the CEO of your life, and actually you deserve a corner office and an executive chair. You don't ever need the bathroom floor. So that's
right.
like why I'm here.
Yes.
But so Toby, to your point, what does a healthy ladder look like? So it looks like moving yourself from, if you find yourself in your reflection at the bottom, it means you're bringing yourself up to the top. In my experience, I had to bring myself to number 1. I know when we bring religion and spirituality into the mix, some people really are like, oh, I want God or the universe number 1. I'm not here to challenge beliefs. And if you want to put God and the universe number 1, that's cool. And put yourself number 2. But for me, even in my makeup, if I have God and the universe above myself, I'm still in somewhat of a sacrifice mode. I'm still not prioritizing myself. And for me, when I really move myself to that top rung, which I do believe I would encourage everyone to put themselves at, even for a temporary amount of time, because when I thought about it, like, and I have 4 kids, so I thought about it this way. I'm like, I don't know that I would ever want my kids to put me above them.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would ever want my kids to be sacrificing themselves for me. Like, no, mom, I'm not going to go to college so I can stay home and take care of you. No, man, I want my kids out thriving. I want to support them. And when I thought about it from that perspective, I was like, wow, what if instead of me serving God, which I do, or the universe, I'm like, what if I allowed the universe to serve me? Right. And to bring me up and hold me, and I could be like, hey, let's go. Like, this is what we're doing. And so it was a little bit flip of perception, but I needed to be held. Right.
Yes.
And so to have the universe under me and rung 2, I felt I could stand. And so I would say for the ladder of self-worth, I want to see the person, you listener, you, Toby, me, in 1 or 2, but I'll let your beliefs dictate where you go. But I just wanted to give some color around that. And then 3 would be your immediate relationships. Those are the ones that should be getting the most of you. In my scenario, my relationships were kind of towards the top, but everything, but but my work and job got so much of me that even though they were a priority,
Yes.
they didn't get much of me at all.
Mm.
And so that's why as we go through this, I have you, the universe, your intimate relationships,
Relationships.
then your secondary relationships. These could be like your work relationships, your
Mm.
social circle, your commitments, whatever, community, all of
Yeah.
those things. And
Yes.
then lastly would actually be your job, money, beliefs, and all of this stuff. So it was like
Yeah.
mind blowing to people.
Mm.
Sometimes they're like, I think you got it all wrong. Well, you can see in the book when I got my ladder right and I was able to rise up into my self-worth, my net worth increased
Yes.
like that's all I can only make a sound for it because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it doubled and then tripled. And I was like, oh my God, this is all I wanted the whole time. But I had my
Mm.
priorities all mixed up. So I
Almost.
hope I didn't take too much time explaining that, but I'd like giving some detail around it.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. But yeah, I mean, it's always important for us to get our priorities right and to get that order right as arrange it in wrongs, basically. So for someone out there who is wondering, how can I detect or how can I identify when my priorities are not set right? Sometimes we could be working on things and thinking, doing everything all right, everything's wonderful, but things don't seem to be working well. But you still cannot identify why it's not working well. So can you give him some tips or some insight into how we could detect the areas where we have to change our priorities in order to get things right?
Yes. What are you complaining about?
Um,
That that is the key.
yeah.
Because again, in the powering through persona,
Mhm.
we know, but we don't know, right? Because we're powering through. We got this. I
Yeah.
remember so many times I was like, affirmation, I'd set myself. I'm like, I'm powerful, I'm strong. And like I'd like go into work like amped up, and then I'd come back, I'd be like, God, I had another, like to my husband, like I had another long day. This
Yeah.
team, this person did this and this person did that. And
Yeah.
now I feel drained. So
Mm.
just in that scenario, I have a list. I feel drained.
Mm.
I had a hectic day. So there's hecticness. I'm drained. There's, people are doing crazy things. I don't have control, which is fine. I don't always have to have control. But I think sometimes my point is that the answers are a lot more simple and in front of us
Yes.
than we care to admit. And so, but in just that example, I was giving my work in that example. I was dedicated to that 12-hour day,
Mm.
So
Yes.
like just
Yes.
in that example, my job was above me. My
Mm.
team was above me.
Mm.
Then I get home and I'm telling my husband how crazy and horrible everything was. And then I'm like, oh, but I got to cook you guys dinner, which is fine. But
Yeah.
like, to answer your question, I think the answer is a little bit more right in front of us if we
Mm.
gave ourselves an honest self-assessment, which is where I start the book too.
Yes, that's true. Yes, yes, that's very true. Like a lot of things that we overlook because of this our power through and to workout methods, and those are the things we are supposed to go back and reassess basically to get an healthy perspective on life basically.
Mm,
Yes, yes. And this the life arc I was referring to earlier was, you wrote that if your net worth is low, you may want to evaluate your self-worth. I read
yes,
this and I was
sir.
like, wow. And you wrote about, your net worth at that moment and how you increased it also. So I would love to know how our net worth is connected to our self-worth, and how can we increase both of them? How can we increase our net worth and our self-worth?
You can do that by prioritizing yourself. Let me tell you this. So in that situation, I've already in the storytelling said that I took a third of my pay cut,
Yes.
right? I took a third pay cut to go to this company.
Mm.
Boom. Self-worth already impacted. Net worth impacted
Yes.
in one swoop, in one decision. It was like, and then all that disempowerment caused more financial stress, more of this. So I want to kind of bring into that, like that feeling of when it isn't working out. Cause I think a lot of people can identify with that. You're paycheck to paycheck. You're wondering where things are going to come from. And so you're afraid to make decisions because you're like, I can't leave this job because I need to pay the bills. And so, but every time we compromise ourselves, we're impacting our self-worth. And every time we impact our self-worth, we're compromising our net worth. right?
Yeah.
And so that it was in my rise from the bathroom floor that I realized that how much the two had a correlation. And so I want to give you the opposite example now.
Mm.
We had talked about admitting when things are fucked and then calling a friend and all of that.
Yeah.
So, hey, I fell to the bathroom floor. There's no lower I could go. So next day, I call my best friend, my work best friend. That's what I call her, Jessie. And I tell her, I'm like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I can't power through. I ended up on the bathroom floor last night, but I feel empowered today because I am the CEO of my life. I have no idea what that means. All I know is I'm going to walk in, and we can talk about boundaries in a second, but I'm going to walk into work with some boundaries. I'm not going to compromise myself, and I'm going to stand in my power, and I'm going to look for another job. And she's like, this is what I mean. You just got to tell people sometimes that you don't have it all figured out. Because she's like, I got you. I'm going to make a phone call for you. And within 24 hours, she got me the interview to the job that I would ultimately 3 months later quit to go to. And in one swoop of restoring my self-worth and not knowing, it's okay. I had to be okay with not knowing. I don't know where this is going to go, but all I know is I'm not willing to compromise myself anymore. I got an offer for almost double of what I was making.
Yeah.
And that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, those two things are connected.
Yes, that's true. Because by the time your net worth increases, your self-worth also basically increases too. Yeah.
It's pretty easy. Yeah, you start feeling that money, you're like, yeah, this feels good.
I feel like $300,000 per month or something like that. Yeah, that's very true. Like, when we look at it in the sense of it, yes, that's true. Like they're intertwined, basically. They're connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But what I'd like to encourage like the listeners is that it does start with your self-worth, though. It's easy to feel self-worth rise when your net worth is rising. It's not as easy to feel your self-worth rise when you're on the bathroom floor or you're living paycheck to paycheck. And the message I want you to hear is you are the CEO of your life. Yeah. If you can pause, like Toby was saying in the beginning, if you can pause, reflect, and he talks about this in his show a lot, and reevaluate, you can make different decisions. And it's in those little decisions of, I always like to say, and I learned this from one of my mentors, that choice has two paths. Yeah. Only two paths. Our choices either serve us or they sabotage us. And the more you make choices that serve you, the more your self-worth will increase. Yes.
Yeah. So we have to make those right decisions in order to become the CEO of our own life, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And one thing that could stop us from becoming the CEO of our lives are these beliefs, these limiting beliefs that we set upon ourselves. So how can we break free? How can we empower ourselves and break free from the limitations that we put upon ourselves and the ones that, the people around us, the loving people around us place on us also?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, I don't want to oversimplify it, but also I do want to kind of just illuminate it a little bit, is pausing to recalibrate. Like so many times we get stuck in a belief of whatever our belief says, but I had a limited belief that said and this is my issues from growing up. I had a limited belief that I have to earn things. I have to work really hard and earn them. And I have to prove it because I got a lot of my people pleasing. I got a lot tied up in validation and approval. Well, sitting on the bathroom floor, there was no other place I had to go. I had to look at my beliefs and say, are these things really helping me or are they hurting me? Yeah. And I wish that I would have given myself permission to explore my beliefs more frequently. So that I didn't have to get so low before I rose again. Yeah. So my answer to that is pausing to ask yourself, is this still working for me? Is it supporting me or are these beliefs hurting me? Because beliefs can be changed.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Except that, we have all these stubborn beliefs also, and we just have to find a way. I'm so thankful that you wrote about them. So like having these old stubborn beliefs and
We call
patterns.
them old stubborn beliefs. They just hang on, man. You're like, you're
Yeah.
still here.
Yeah, but you have to find a way to break free from them. You have to find a way to create new policies for yourself, and also set healthy boundaries. And
Yes.
that's one thing I want to ask also, like, how can we set healthy boundaries for ourselves? How can we finally break free from these old stubborn beliefs and patterns and create the new policies for ourselves and stay and stick to that healthy boundaries that we set for ourselves?
I think the first thing is, we talked about that ladder of self-worth, but really what it is giving yourself permission to say yes to yourself. And that sometimes requires you to say no to other people.
Yeah.
And that, again, kind of gets tied up in beliefs, that kind of gets tied up in image, that kind of gets tied up in validation and approval. It's uncomfortable. And I'm not going to sit on the side and tell listeners that standing up and being the CEO of your life is going to be easy. It's empowering as hell, and it's fun, and it's this, but it is also hard, because that means now that you have accountability. It means now that you have responsibility. And with that, like, CEOs have to make really tough decisions, right?
Yeah.
And, I had to make some really hard decisions once I rose into my own CEO, that, saying yes to attending every meeting, saying yes to being project lead, saying yes to being team mom. Too many yeses meant I had no time for myself. I had no space for myself. I had no hobbies. I had no nothing. So, kind of in that space of creating new policies for yourself and putting in one big boundary, one big bad boundary, is giving yourself permission to say no to other people, places, and things, so that you can start saying yes to yourself. And that is like one tip that I would recommend the listeners to try.
Yes, and I believe in the pattern that you shared already, or in the ladder method that you shared already. Like whenever you place yourself on top, you won't be overwhelmed by all the things you will have placed above you. Basically, you won't be overwhelmed by your work, by the relationships. But by the time you place yourself on top, you are able to pull other things up with you, basically. And that way,
Yes.
yes,
Oh, I get the goosebumps as you say that, Toby, but that's absolutely right.
yeah.
Everything supports you. It's incredible to be able to have such a 180-degree turnaround.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Wow. That's what I wish for myself, for you, and for everyone that's listening out there. Like that's 180-degree turnaround to something greater, something much more awesome, and becoming the chief CEO of your life, basically, from CEO to the chief CEO to the
Yeah, go as high as you can.
Exactly. Yes. One thing that that stuck with me also in your book is in chapter 8, where you talked about the power of and.
Ooh, that's one of my favorite
Wow,
conversations.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yep.
so can you, I would love you to tell me what the power of and is. How can we replace us with and?
Yeah. So replacing or with and,
Yeah.
this was another thing that was almost as a severe aha in my life as you are the CEO of your life, because I was working, I mentioned, as a Fortune 500 sales leader. I was a mom. I had all these different, I say that we wear metaphorical hats. So listeners, you can just identify your metaphorical hats. Who are you at work? Who are you at home? Are you a wife? Are you a husband? Are you a brother or a sister? Like once you start putting up all your labels, most people can get to 10 metaphorical hats really quick, right?
Yes.
And we have been conditioned, whether it's society or upbringing, whatever it is, to kind of just show up as that singular person, not a whole person, but like if I'm showing up to work, I need to be work Becca. I'm not allowed to be mom Becca. I'm not allowed to be yogi Becca. I got to be work Becca. And what I have found is that limitation was really harming me. It was fragmenting me and taking a lot of my energy. And it takes a lot of energy for us to show up only as partial selves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so it was a little bit of a funny story, but we mentioned that I ended up taking this yoga teacher training.
Yes.
And so I was taking yoga teacher training, and then I had this like corporate job. So the long story short is my yoga community was like, oh, I bet you can't wait till you quit your corporate career because that must be killing your soul. And I'm like, I actually love my career. Like I had no intentions of quitting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I happen to like corporate sales and I also happen to like yoga. Like, is that
Mm.
okay? So anyway, it was kind of just funny because I was like, no, guys, I'm not quitting my job. I just
Mm.
also like yoga. And then at work, they were like, you're crazy. Like, you're going to quit this job to go be a yoga teacher? They're like, Becca, you do know yoga teachers don't make any money, right?
Mm.
And I was like, it never dawned on me that I would be leaving my job to become a
Yoga
yoga
teacher.
teacher. And it was kind of like in that, using that story, but it was that pulling, like I felt, and I wrote in the book, I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions. And yet I'm one person that truly enjoys both.
Yeah.
And it was in that space that I was like, I just need to give myself permission to be both.
Mm.
And in doing so, you talk about self-worth and empowerment.
Yeah.
That was a rush of empowerment. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am both.
Mm.
And then it made me feel even more empowered. I'm like, how many more ands can I put in this? Like I'm a yogi and a corporate sales leader. I'm
Yes.
a yogi corporate sales leader and a mom.
Yeah.
I can want to be driven and have a 6-figure career, and it doesn't make anything else less about me, right? I
Yeah.
can be
Yes.
all of it.
Mm.
And so like once I started shouting like the power of and from the rooftops, more people were like, oh, that feels so much better.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. One could ask, like, how do you balance it all, Becca? Like, being a sales lead and also being a yoga teacher and being a mom, and you have relationships, you have friends, you have family. How do you then balance it all together?
Comes back to my one big boundary,
Putting
and
yourself.
that's putting myself first and
Yeah.
giving myself permission to say yes to myself first
Mm.
and no to other people second.
Yes.
And it's all in there because I get to like, that's like my saying, I get to have it all without sacrificing it all.
Mm.
Because, and it does mean, and this is what I like to say to listeners, it does mean that I miss out on things. Don't get me wrong, but my energy, I'm not missing out on my energy.
Mm.
I'm not missing out on feeling life. I'm not
Mm.
missing out on my hobbies. I get to say yes to the things that in this moment in time are really serving me. And Toby, one thing that I think is super important as we explore this power of and also this big boundary is that we're humans, we evolve. And so what works for me, what is my yeses today might not be my yeses tomorrow.
Yeah,
And
true.
that's why this pausing, one of the things that I do well right now and why I wrote the book is because I constantly pause now to reevaluate.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
every 90 days,
Yes.
like just like a CEO would, they have quarters in business. You have Q1, Q2, Q3.
Yeah.
Every 90 days, I pause and I just do a quick little brainstorm. What's working? What's not working? What do I like? What do I
Mm.
not like?
Mm.
Because I come off, I'm human. I'm not perfect at this by any means,
That's true.
but I am stopping. I
Mm.
am pausing. I am reflecting and I'm recalibrating, which
Yes.
allows me on the greater picture. Like I have
Mm.
bad days, but in a bigger picture,
Yeah.
that's how I'm able to do it.
That's true. Yes, yes, that's very true. And that, I mean, just it requires us to always, to always stop and reevaluate, and that way to recalibrate or basically our lives.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. And so, how would you say you converted all your pain, like being on the bathroom floor, into purpose today? Like, you took all of this experience and you are now using it
Yes.
to impact other people's life. So, how would you advise us to take our pain, our bad experiences of life, and turn it
Yeah.
into purpose?
Thank you for asking about that because I think it is my closing chapter, but
Yeah.
it's probably the part that I get to talk about the least.
Mm.
Um, but I also think it's the most important
Yes.
because we all have a story. We
Mm.
have all been, I think if one thing everybody can relate in, like if you're talking to an audience or a group, like has anybody been through pain and everyone raises their hand,
Yeah,
right? Like,
that's
and
true.
everyone's like, oh, you don't know what I've been through. And the other person's like, you don't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
And what I encourage listeners to do is really, there's I do have a little bit of a trauma background and I studied it because I've been through a lot.
Mm.
which you would, find out more in the book. But what I want to say is that, there's a certain level where you do fall into victimhood initially when you've gone through a horrible situation, and then you kind of heal,
Yes.
and some people move on from it and they don't really talk about it again. And
Mm.
so there's different levels of how people cope with pain and trauma that they've been through. But when I finally got to a point of saying, okay, this thing happened and it's not going away. It's
Mm.
just, I might be a little more detached from it. I might um, not be as hurt by it anymore, but it's
Mhm.
still there. And I think for me, I use the analogy of a roller coaster in the book, but it's like I could either go through life holding on to this pain and gripping, if you're using the analogy of a roller coaster, I could go through life gripping the bars, keeping my eyes closed, and just quenching through the entire experience,
Mm.
just waiting for it to be over.
Yeah. That's true.
Or I can say, wow, okay, I've got an opportunity to ride this roller coaster again. I
Yes.
can grab the bars and I can
Yes.
look out with wonder and just, smile and anticipate what's coming around the corner next, and
Mm.
just ride the roller coaster from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And it was when I kind of got that, like, hey, I have choice of how I want to show up.
Mm.
And when I realized that I had more choice in it than I thought I had, I was able to reflect back on my pain and say, oh my gosh, everything I went through,
Mm.
there's a way I can share this. That's like as I'm sharing this story with you guys, I'm not in my wound, right? I'm in the story. I'm able to say, here's the gemstones that I found from it.
Yes.
And here's how you might be able to apply them to your life. And
Mm.
that is really where I think all of us have gemstones.
Yes.
All of us have gemstones from our pain that we can say, this is how we turned ourselves around. And,
Mm.
here's, how you might be able to take whatever lessons from what I've learned and apply them to your own life.
Yes, that's true.
And that's how, for me, you start turning your pain to purpose.
Mm.
And then from this place of purpose, like you're in your purpose now, you're helping people, you're in with your podcast. And like when you're able to kind of transform that story, and then you hear a listener write into you and say, oh, thank you for making that episode on that topic, I really needed that. Or
Yeah.
someone writes me, like I had my first person that I don't know at all
Mm.
email me and said, I needed your book.
Yeah.
I was getting bullied at work and I have so much more to offer. I was becoming disempowered, and now they're interviewing and getting an offer that was way above what they were getting at their current employer.
Yes.
And they're being seen for their value and their worth.
Mm.
Like that's it,
Yes. That's true.
that's it. And
Yes.
so longer answer, but so important. Like
Yes.
everyone's pain has purpose,
Mm.
even if you don't think it does.
Yes, I love that answer. That's so wonderful. Like not allowing those pain or bad experiences of life to pull you down, but you should use it as a stepping stone in order to climb up that ladder and placing yourself first and increasing your self-worth, increasing your net worth also, and basically empowering yourself to become the CEO of your own life, basically. Yeah. Becca, you taught me all of that. I'm so grateful for that. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So for people out there who would love to, maybe connect with you in order to get across to you for coaching, because I know you offer coaching also, life coaching to
Mhm.
people, or maybe yoga also, or so just some advice, or maybe to ask you more questions that we were not able
Sure.
to cover in this episode. Like, what's the best way to connect and work with you?
I always say that social media is always a good way to stay constantly connected. And I'm on 3 platforms and I have the same handle across each one. So I'll start with the handle. It's at Becca Powers 1313, and that is Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. As far as, coming a little more deeper into my world, I have, you can get on my mailing list and get some freebies too. So I didn't even tell you this, Toby, but if you go to beccapowers.com/podcast freebies. And I'll give Toby the link so he can include it in the show notes. It'll have the self-assessment that I have in the book,
Mhm.
and a little article I wrote on how to create change when you feel stuck. So that way you can start getting unstuck right away, getting that self-assessment going, which we both feel is so valuable. And then you'll be in my email world. So when I do release coaching programs and workshops and things like that, you'll be first to know.
Yes, that'll be so awesome. I'm going to place all of these links in the show note of this episode, so you can just copy them or click on them and get across to Becca Powers and get across to our different platforms and order the book also. If you go to beccapowers.com, you'll find the options, the various options in which you can get access to the book.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you
Yes.
so
I'm
much.
like, oh yeah, the book.
Yes, I do have the book, and I encourage everyone to get the book also. It's a wonderful workbook, a wonderful book filled with stories. You talk about Grandma West in it. You talk
Oh
about
my gosh, isn't she awesome?
Yeah, she is. Everyone needs a Grandma West.
Yes.
With a car coming down the road, with the music, and happiness is not money. Different stories that I don't want to give out now. I want everyone to just get the book and read it and just enjoy the wonderful story and wonderful life experience that Becca has been opportuned or blessed to experience. Thank you so much, Becca.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toby.